my journey to becoming a mother was not easy, and it was not typical. It took my husband and I several years to have children. And in that process, there was a lot of loss, and there was a lot of, we had a lot of treatments to try and conceive, and we had a five early miscarriages. Those all happened in the first trimester. And then we were able to conceive via treatment, and the pregnancy was going really well. We made it past the first trimester. Everything was going great. My husband deployed when I was about 24 weeks or so pregnant, and we expected that he'd be home when I was about 37, 38 weeks. But unfortunately, something went wrong that unfortunately we still don't know why or what, but we lost the baby in my third trimester before he came home. And so that was one of the most difficult things I've ever been through ever in my life. It was really difficult in our marriage, but it was also just a really difficult start to motherhood. So I had to carry him an extra 5 days until my husband could get home from Afghanistan. When I gave birth to my son, because a lot of people also, including myself, had no idea that when your child is stillborn and you know they're deceased, you still have to have a typical birth, right? So it's better for mom, and it's just better for her future deliveries if she's able to carry again. And so I had to be induced and have a typical delivery. And it was a 36-hour, very painful, grueling, emotionally, physically labor.
Good morning. We are so excited to bring you Extraordinary Together, which is Empowered Mom's first video series. And I have one of the best people that we get to talk to today, a dear friend, an incredible writer, a successful mom, and just an all around rock star friend. So, Lisa is the kind of person that you need to have in your corner. So, if you take nothing away from this interview, go find a Lisa because she is the friend that cheers you on, gives you real advice, shows up when it's most important. I just feel like you've always been there when it counts and never the, okay, just let's run them over with our truck. You always come in with the best, like, hey, all right, but like, here's the next right thing. And I'm here for you through it. So love that about you. It's always been my favorite part of our friendship. But today I think it's fun. We get to talk about a lot of parts of motherhood and your journey and really open up to struggles and real things that I think are going to touch a lot of lives and a lot of moms. And it's those things that we should talk about more that we don't. So I'm excited to dive in. But first, I want to get to know you and let moms get to know you. So, what would you say your mom's style is?
Well, first of all, thank you for the warm intro. I don't know that I'm all those things, but I strive, and I thank you for feeling that way. So my mom's style, I've been asked this more than once, and I see all the quizzes that say, "What is your mom's style?" I don't know, and I don't really care if I to know. I mean, the thing is, I'm just a mom doing my best, and I think we put ourselves in these buckets of like, we do gentle parenting, or we do this, or we're a laid back mom, or the reality is every season I'm a different kind of mom because my kids need a different kind of mom. So depending on maybe my 5-year-old boy who is just in a season of chaos mentally, emotionally, developmentally, I'm a different mom for him than I am when he feels balanced. So I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question with a solid title. I would just say I'm a mom that's figuring it out as I go. If
I
that's
love that. I love that so much. And I think that's where I think every mom is. And part of, what we do at Empowered Moms is we start to break down those things like, did you breastfeed? Did you bottle
right,
feed? That
right.
puts us in a different bucket. And I don't think those labels are necessary because they're not really who we are and it doesn't bring us together. So the whole point here is to knock down some of those walls. So I love that answer so much. I know a lot of moms are stuck in there. This is how I parent and this is what I do. And I love that too. I think that's great. If you have that and you need that definition of like, this is how I mom, and that gets you through your day, I love that too. But I love the changing of the seasons and just adapting to what your kids need. That's really, I'm in teenage mode over here. So I'm with you. It's just like different, they're 16 months apart and it's different for each kid. So
Yeah. And
sure.
I, I think sometimes when we create that title, we are setting a goal for ourselves that boxes us in versus a goal for what our kids need. And so while some kids really thrive with a certain type of parenting structure, the other one next to them may really be suffering from that. So,
Yep.
And then we feel bad for our we get upset at ourselves, like, I wasn't gentle enough today, or I wasn't firm enough today, or whatever it may be. So I don't know. If you feel like really bonded to a title and it's working for you, fantastic. But if you don't feel like you have that, there's nothing wrong with that either, in my opinion.
I agree. Wholeheartedly agree. Yeah. It's a tough thing, especially like parenting different for
Mhm.
different kids. I mean, mine are so close in age, so I'm always like, wait a second, same womb, like you're only this many months apart,
Right.
both girls,
Right.
like how are we doing this so different? But we are, and we meet them where they need to be. So yeah, I think we lean a little more crunchy granola in this house, but it's certainly, there's fast food days too. So so
In regards to that stuff, yeah, we are more we really, if you looked at our home, and I think if people looked at the way we function in all aspects of our lives, we really are trying to raise kids to, above all, their character is above all. That, we homeschool, and we care much more about their character than we do their curriculum, or going to college one day. Although those things are great, and we desire them to have those goals and desires, I'm much less worried about that. So we also try to have a much more natural minded home. That came from a series of things I think we'll talk about later. That wasn't something that just kind of hit me like a fad. It was something that was necessary for our home. And so we've seen a lot of success that way. And we enjoy spending time together, quality time together. So my husband is a very hard worker, but I often toss my son out there with him, whether he's doing cutting down a tree or building something. He's out there with him, and so I think teaching our kids now what we're doing versus waiting till they're old enough to understand those things is really valuable to us.
I love that. I love that they're just together in those precious moments. That's really important. And I think so much of, again, what we're trying to do here and what we see so much of, and the whole reason this movement was started was, I know there's moms that are instant, she homeschools. I'm going to shut this off. And that's
Mhm.
fine, but that's exactly what we're trying to break apart. Like whether you are homeschooling, whether you
Mhm.
are public school, whether you are private, these things are not important. At the end of the day, it really is character and it's community and what we do for each other as moms. And I'm not judging you. We're all just doing our best together. I love that you homeschool. I love that you're teaching these kids. Ultimately, we're raising the next generation and we're sending them out into the world and we want them to do good, better, hopefully, than what we're getting now. I think even if we jump into other parts of aspects of our society right now, I don't think we're proud on either side of what we have to offer. And I think we as moms have a huge responsibility right now to raise the next generation that can lead if they want to lead, if they want to, yeah, chop down a tree. They have the skill. Like there's so many different skills and aspects that I think have died in our society that we are so focused on those buckets that you talked about. We've lost what really matters. So, yeah,
And I think,
we're here for that
yeah,
unity.
I don't mean to interrupt on the end of it, but I think it's so important too, because we hybrid schooled. We did a couple different things. I think it's really important to know that, well, I can speak for myself when I say I homeschool because I can and because I want to, not because I think the other options aren't valid. So I think we have moved into this weird space of there's this competition or this hierarchy. Oh, you're a homeschool mom, so you're a better mom, or you're a working mom, so you're a better mom, or whatever it may be. No, the reality is we're all moms. We're all struggling. We're all lacking sleep. We're all working really hard. We all want what's best for our children. And when we focus in on that, and we focus in on our own homes and the desires and the values that we set up for our own homes, we shouldn't be looking outside that box and, like, judging others for what they're doing. That's not like how we've been designed to care for one another.
Sure.
So I think that, I bring that up because we didn't necessarily do it because we think every other system is wrong. We do it because it's what we want to do and we can. Not everyone has the option, right? So,
I think that's a huge blessing too. And that's one space I've always loved your heart too, is I see you looking for what fits your kids best, what fits your family best, and ultimately not ever sacrificing on those that the goals that are important to you, the ultimate end. I see you always looking at that picture of who you want them to be and their character, and like each decision you make kind of falls into that. So I love that it just we've kind of knocked down that wall of like, do I need to be doing what everybody says I should be
right.
doing right now, or what fits, or what will get me in this community of moms? I love that, and I hope that we kind of bring to light that that really needs to shift to be the focus is do what's best for your family, do what's best for the end goal of like raising and shaping this next generation to do better. And
Well,
yeah,
they're
we
our
weren't
legacy.
signed for this at all.
Our kids are our legacy. So
Sure.
what we instill in them, we hope and pray that they instill down in generations to follow. And so if we're following trends or we're following things that all the other moms say we should be doing or doing it the way they do it, we're literally putting our focus on a failing trend because trends come and go. So the values and the stuff deep inside is what is going to be lasting in our children.
For sure. Absolutely. So I love that we're already knocking down walls so we can kind of all come into this interview no matter
Mhm.
what perspective we're looking from or what lens we feel we need to be looking through and just be moms and just be this community where we support each other in raising that next generation and shaping our legacy. What and I know this was such a hard thing because I think a lot of moms that I set up interviews with were like, "I can't give advice. I don't even know what I'm doing," like you're afraid to hop on camera and give advice. And that's not even the perspective we're coming from. This is just to say, hey, we've been in this season or we've had this experience. If we can get the next mom through it one tiny bit easier and like make her journey better and get her through it stronger, then that's what we're here to do. We're certainly not here to be like, I'm the best mom at homeschooling and I do, or I'm the best mom at this and I found this and figured it all out. Now I'm going to tell you how. But if you would be willing to give advice to like that mom that's either new to where do I school my kids or like just new to being a mom, what is just that best thing you could leave her with to get her through a little bit easier?
I say this about every situation in parenting and in even my personal life, whether because I freelance work, not everything's an emergency. And so I think that in my very early moments of parenting, everything seemed like an emergency. A tummy ache, it's terrifying, right? A tummy ache, a kid that hit for the first time, or someone gets picked on at the park, or maybe your child picked on someone at the park. Your kid is hungry. Everything is an emergency, and
Drop
so
everything.
right. Well, I we're in this like time of like everything is so fast paced, right? Like everything is we need it in an instant. We order it, it's here in hours or the next day. I mean, we live in this world of instant gratification. And I think that falls over into so many areas of our lives. And same with my children, when my kids tell me, I like a snack, but I'm in the middle of doing something that's, important or, just if I'm doing something, it doesn't even have to be super important. I'm working on something. This isn't an emergency. You can get a glass of water, and I'll be with you in a few moments. I try to carry that over through all of the things because otherwise I get really overwhelmed and overstimulated. If I try to meet everyone's need at that second all the time, there's nothing left of me. I'm tired and I've been there. I have done the opposite. And for many, many years, up until the past couple of years, I was a single mom in regards of my husband was deployed, active duty, gone all the time. So, and there's no local family. And so when I was trying to meet all those needs 24 hours around the clock, nursing babies, I just burn right out. But the reality is not everything is an emergency. And if we continue to like treat things as though they are, that instant gratification thing will never get better in our culture. So that's the advice I would give to any mom. Is this an emergency or can it wait a few seconds, a few minutes, a few hours, or even to the next day?
Yeah. And to just breathe, I think, through it.
Mhm.
I think yeah, we've all been there. Everything's triage mode. So you're constantly in that state of just burnout, anxiety, high emotion. And you're right, most of the time it's not. I mean, if they're bleeding out, yes, make it make it the emergency. But like I think we tend to, you're so right. We treat every little thing as though they're bleeding out and they're really not. Like, and they become more self-sufficient in that too. So I think that perspective and that mindset shift really kind of reframes everything. It really reshapes your day, their growth, all of that. I think it really, really impacts across the board. I love that. It's hard to step out of that though, for sure.
It is.
That you really have to be intentional of like, you're okay. We're okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
can't.
and I still struggle with it sometimes too. I really like my house tidy, and that's just a personal thing. I feel like if things are all over, I struggle, but I have young kids. It's very hard to keep that pace, right? So, when the dishes need to get done, to me, they need to get done now. But the reality is this isn't an emergency. I can sit down with my kids and do a puzzle for 20 minutes, and the dishes aren't going to cry about it. I can get back to them later. And so as I, develop in my parenting and as a wife and as a woman, I think that there's more to that I'm learning versus just teaching them, that like I have to sit back very often and remind myself that these aren't emergencies too. So it's twofold for sure.
I love that. I think you taught me that even early on before you even had kids. I remember you bringing takeout and you're like, we're using paper plates. If you get the china out, I'm going to leave your house. Like and I'm like I want to serve and do all these special things. You're like, yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, it's paper plates. Like this is non-negotiable. I'm like, oh yeah,
I
okay.
remember that day.
Yeah.
I do. I do.
Yep. But it to me hit like a ton of bricks and it was so nice. I'm like, she sees me, she knows what I'm gonna do because I want to ultimately serve her, but in this moment, that actually shifted perspective to me too of like, when I don't let you help or bring the takeout or do the paper plates, I'm essentially taking that joy from you too as a friend who wants to help me out in these tough moments. And I say tough as in same thing. Husband gone 6 months. I've got a newborn, a 16-month-old, and I'm like, how do I do?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think even before you were a mom, you had that sense of like, I see other people and I want to you notice those things. And I love that. That's why I say if you take nothing away from this interview, go find a Lisa, like,
Oh,
that sees you
you.
and notices things and can help build you up in that. I think, that's ultimately our goal here. But I would love to step into a little bit about your journey as a military family. I think, especially we just celebrated 4th of July, and so many people are like, yes, we love our freedom. We're thankful for people who fight for us and serve us. Something we've always instilled in our kids. Some of these young men haven't even lived a life yet. They went straight into the service. And then you've got families and you've got kids away from their mom or dad just to keep us safe. And thank you, first of all, for what your family has done to make sure that we can live in freedom and live safely. I can't thank you enough for that. But I would love to give people a glimpse. I don't think it's not talked about, or you just say thank you for your service and move on. What does that really feel like and look like for you as
Oh, well, that's really multifaceted. It's really multifaceted. I mean,
a big, a big
it's a
ask?
big question because there's so many layers to that question. I'll start by saying when I met my husband, we were young. We were early 20s. We are now in our 40s. And my husband already had a couple years of service under his belt. I grew up, my father was in the military, and he was a single dad for for half of my childhood until he met my wonderful stepmom. But the reality is my dad told me over and over again not to marry someone in the military because he didn't want the life for me that some women have to have, where you're constantly apart and you're doing things on your own, and you have so much on your back, right? And the reality is it's true. There's a lot on your back because you carry many roles when your spouse is deployed, and not even just when they're deployed, but when they come home, these transition periods of being together are short and sweet. So you can't just hand over all these roles to him, like paying the bills or being the main disciplinary, or all of a sudden he's the one that cleans this, or you know what I mean. So you kind of become the head of the household, which is not most natural in family. Like normally we want our husbands to lead our home, but we have to take the role reversal because it's what our nation needs. Like we need people to step up and take care of our nation so that we can be free and our children can be free and lay their heads down at night like that. Well, I think that there's one thing I learned over the years. So let's see, he retired 2 years ago after 22 years of service. If there's one thing that I could say about being a military spouse and feeling like you have to do it all, that is a misconception. You don't have to do it all. You just have to be willing and humble enough to get help, take help, give help when it's needed. And you'd be amazed how those circles and those communities form to take care of one another so quickly. And so, Jen, when you said that, I came to your house that day, you were not a military spouse, right? You didn't, or I didn't have children at the time, but just showing up with takeout because I saw a need, that happens really quickly in military life. People see needs and they jump in and take care of one another. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful synchrony. It really is. And it doesn't go away. Like 2 years later, we're not even in a military community anymore, but we have found friends here. and we're constantly jumping in to help out, or we see a need and you don't just say, oh, I'm going to pray for you. No, you show up with food, you take their kids for the day, you help drive them to appointments, whatever it may be, because that's what we do. That's what you become as a military spouse. So I think it's just, you're not alone. And I wasn't alone. I tried to be alone for a long time. I thought I had to do it all. And I think when I realized I couldn't do it all alone was a very pivotal moment for me. And it's a funny story. I'll try to make it really short. But if you want a good laugh, stick around. I was maybe 6 weeks postpartum with my second. My daughter was 2.5. And it's a great story. It makes me Google just saying. I don't know. I must have looked like Medusa. I had no sleep. This is, let's talk 7 in the morning. Maybe this is 7 in the morning when this is all happening. And my hair's all over the place, not a lick of makeup, complete adult acne, postpartum phase, massive boobs, like just a train wreck, right? I had not lost any fat. And I'm in this robe, and my son was nursing probably every 15 to 30 minutes that night. He was just cluster feeding. My 2-year-old was just waking up because of him all the time. Daddy's deployed. Bye, dad. He's like in Afghanistan at the time. Here I am. And I'd never done this with two. So I smell something that is a concern. Like all of a sudden, I'm like, it really smells like something's burning. And it smells like something's burning upstairs. And I haven't used anything downstairs, you know? So I go upstairs and I'm trying not to overreact. I'm trying not to do that. This is an emergency thing. I don't see smoke. I don't see, or I'm sorry, I don't smell smoke and I don't see fire, but clearly there's something going on. So in my brain, it must have been in the attic and we must call the fire department and get outside. It was freezing. By the way, this was like early March and it was just very cold. And I'm in a bathrobe and I call the fire department and they tell me to get outside. And so here I am with my 2.5-year-old and my newborn baby in like in the carrier with a bathrobe on. I look like death and we walk outside. And the fire department shows up. And I think that day, every 24-year-old 8-pack, gorgeous
Oh
calendar
gosh, of
shows up
course. Yeah.
and is stirrups and this is not real. This is not happening, right? So they
Fire
all
department calendar just came to your house. Yeah.
calendar showed the calendar. The March calendar showed up and I was far from my prime. Not that it
Oh,
mattered, happily married, but I mean, you just feel like
it
crap.
matters.
And so here I am waiting outside for them to tell me that like my house is going to blow, right?
Sure.
And they come downstairs proudly within 3 minutes holding my resin diffuser. A resin diffuser is like a frankincense resin. If you haven't heard of it, Google it. It's just like little stones that you could burn and it's very, it's a very, I don't know, hippie thing, crunchy thing. Well, my daughter had my 2.5-year-old took it out of my room and she decided to go plug it in her room because she wanted the oils going. So they come
Oh,
down with the resin burner and I am dying. I'm like, this is not my life. But I realized
thanks for
that
stopping.
how overwhelmed I was that I didn't even notice she took that and put it in her room and plugged something in at 2.5 years old that could have truly it could have started a fire, right? And I realized like I don't have to do this alone, you know, and I can get naps. I just there's so many people that love coming and cuddling babies. Why am I
Sure.
taking that from them? That's not always just an offer. That's a gift. Like let people give that gift to you and so I started that. I started if I had a really hard night where I couldn't sleep, I put the text out to a friend or two.
Yeah.
Is anyone able to cover me for a nap today? I can't do it tonight, you know, because as a military mom, you don't get the relief of them coming home even just the next day. It's you're talking months, you know. So if you don't take help, you're just gonna burn in circles. And the reality is you're always the first to offer the help. So taking the help is equally as important as giving it.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
think
that was a long answer.
no, that's in all walks too. I think well, from what I've gotten to see just from being a mom whose husband is in the nuclear world and was gone 6 to 7 months,
Mhm.
I got a lot of military community glimpses because those women just swooped in. I remember buying like a baby carrier off of Craigslist back then, and she showed up with blueberry muffins. And she's like, "Well, I figured if you're buying a baby thing, you must be a new mom, and here you go." She is one of her husband passed away on the helicopter crash after they killed bin Laden. So she came by, we became instant friends, and she's like, "Oh, your husband travels too." And I just saw like meeting her friends and just this instant community that's built. So I think you're right in saying it's there if you take it. So it's
Yep.
really, if you're willing to reach out and humble yourself, there is a whole community of women who have been there. They're ready to serve you. They want to help you. It's their joy because they know exactly that walk you're in. So yeah, I think not only in the military world, which those communities just I could cry just thinking back how I saw them support one another, especially through loss. It's there. We just really have to reach out. We have to be better at not pretending like we've got this all figured out and we can handle it all alone, especially if you are single momming at any point in your journey. You got to reach out. You got to take the nap. You got to ask for help. You got to do those things. So I love that your firefighter moment happened for you because you probably needed that too. Because you really are that, you know, that I want to serve others. So I'm sure humbling yourself to get help in those moments was not easy at all. So
No, yeah, it wasn't, but it paid off and it taught me a lot. And then I was able to do it with more comfort. The thing is, if we take care of each other, like who's judging? I think in the mom world, we're comparing ourselves to other moms all the time. And so we're fighting the Instagram reels, we're fighting this reel. The reality is it's like we're all like screwing it up every day. We're making messes. We're having to fix things. We're learning. I mean, have you ever raised kids before? The kids you're raising? No. So it's our first time doing this. And, if we try to keep up with the Joneses situation, that Jones is over there breaking down too. It's Jones, she's struggling. And if we could all just take down those walls and say, let's do paper plates tonight, we would have such a different dynamic of motherhood, you
yeah,
know?
we really would. And I think that's the part of society where I want this voice to come in and I want people to
Yeah,
hear you and
right.
hear moms of like, this is not it. I remember the mom that I thought had it all figured out, and I was like, I've gotta go over to her house showered, and, like, I gotta be ready because she's always, like, to the nines, and just kids are well behaved, and I remember walking in her kitchen one day, and she's like, "I'm failing, like, I'm just doing such a terrible job as mom." She started crying, I'm like, oh my word, if you're failing, I may as well hang it up because you're the picture to me of this perfect mom that is on Instagram and doing all these things. What on earth? They really are. We're all breaking down. There isn't that perfect mom. There's not the mom that can do it all by herself. And the
No,
longer you try to do it yourself, the less you're serving yourself and your kids. I mean, it really is, you got to come to that point of like, it's okay. We need to build a community. I need to ask for help. I need to find my tribe. I need to find the one that's going to show up for paper with paper plates and not want Instagram pretty China meals that she can put online, but like it's just there in my kitchen on paper plates, not even sitting, holding my child so I can take the shower or take the nap. Asking and humbling yourself is really huge. But I think deeper than what we go through, and I always said this, like, my husband's just in a nuclear facility, he might get an extra dose of radiation, just as long as our kids don't come out green, I'm cool, but what you what
they're
you
green.
deal with, they're fine. No, we're good. No one's green here, no one's hulking out, but I think you deal with and you're talking about not putting yourself in a state of emergency in all these other spaces because you really are in a state of emergency in what your husband was doing and worrying about him and his safety and every day is he going to come home, I'm sure that's a question, but how did you like I just want to speak to that mom that's probably sitting there dealing with that, like how do you work through that, how do you get
Oh,
past to get through your day?
there was a lot of that. I mean, for probably 75 to 80% of my husband's career, he was in special operations. So there was a lot of, I don't even know where he is. I don't know what country he's in. I have no way to communicate with him. He has to only communicate with me. If I need to get a message to him, I need to call the ombudsman, who's kind of a family representative for the whole command, who's a spouse. That spouse has to reach up to the command 5 times before he can even get back to me, and that's if deemed worthy to call me back. Right? I can't call because our kid has a tummy ache. I could call if our kid's in the hospital, right? So everything, that's where I think, is this an emergency, came in really, really powerfully to me because I had to, it was my only thing that could bring me down, right? Is this an emergency? And so I started to just, and I would panic sometimes if I didn't hear from him from several days, or there was weird stuff on the news and I still didn't hear from him for a couple days. I knew something was going down. Now, 25 years later from the time he started the service, I still don't know a lot of the stories. I still don't know if he was involved in that situation or not. He's home, praise the Lord. But it became that this isn't an emergency right now. Right now, I know nothing of him being harmed or in danger's way. So today is okay, or this moment is okay. And I would have to remind myself that all over again because I would create, and women do this. We do it with our own children. I know you do. We've already gone through the whole burial process of our own lives, right? Like,
Worst
how many
case
times have you laid there?
scenario.
How many times have you laid there and thought about, like, if your husband's 30 minutes late from work and you haven't heard from him in a car accident, where did that go in your brain? And now you're going into how do I blah, 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 XYZ. If I allowed myself to do that for all of those years, I couldn't have done it. I mean, I would have been a basket case, and there were times I was, but I think the reality is you have to be in the moment. This moment's okay, you know? And even if the next moment's not, you will find your way through it. You will. We've been through some moments that were not okay, and we found our way through it. We've been through to what to us is the worst of the worst, and we survived it. It's not fun, and it's not something I would wish on anybody. But we are a strong family of faith, and without going through that, we wouldn't have had the depth of the faith we do now because the Lord was able to sustain us through some of the hardest times. So if you right now are going through something like that, whether your husband's deployed or you haven't heard from him in a few days, or one of his buddies was hurt but you haven't heard from him, been through all that,
Yeah.
this moment, what you don't know means everything's okay. And so that's how I have to live.
I love that perspective. I think that's really sweet and probably the only way you can do or you are in that spiral of like it is worst case scenario. So yeah, I think stepping out of that and just saying like we're okay right now. We're
Mhm.
good. But I can't imagine that feeling of like him being gone and like you don't know what he's doing or where he is. I mean, there's just such that loss of the safety aspect of things with your husband of like he's okay, we're okay. He's out, fighting and serving. But what an honor. I mean, I think that's just the highest level of honor is that he's out there serving and keeping us safe. But I'm sure that has brought a lot into your marriage too. That was hard
Oh,
as
yeah.
just him coming home and trying to unpack all that he's seen and dealt with, and
Mhm.
that's scary. That's really scary stuff, what they do, so you mentioned that you and your husband, during a time when he was away, deployed, and you're going through all these hard things as a military wife, that you endured one of the greatest hardships you could ever endure, which was losing your child. So talk to me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So our journey to parent, or my journey to becoming a mother, it was not easy, and it was not typical. Although more and more we're hearing about infertility being such a strong, big thing going on. So it took my husband and I several years to have children. And in that process, there was a lot of loss, and there was a lot of, we had a lot of treatments to try and conceive, and we had a 5 early miscarriages. Those all happened in the first trimester. And then we were able to conceive via treatment, and the pregnancy was going really well. We made it past the first trimester. Everything was going great. My husband deployed when I was about 24 weeks or so pregnant, and we expected that he'd be home when I was about 37, 38 weeks. But unfortunately, something went wrong that unfortunately we still don't know why or what, but we lost the baby in my third trimester before he came home. And so that was one of the most difficult things I've ever been through ever in my life. It was really difficult in our marriage, but it was also just a really difficult start to motherhood. So I had to carry him an extra 5 days until my husband could get home from Afghanistan. And the reality of being,
Alone, you're finding out that you've endured this great loss and you are alone in that moment. I
yeah,
can't imagine because as a mom, there is no harder thing, there's no greater loss than the loss of your child. I think even when you hear parents of older kids that have passed away, and they've lost their older child that they've had their life with, they say it is the worst loss on earth that we can know. It's the hardest pain, it's the worst, deepest hurt that we can know. So
yeah,
my mom heart already aches for you deeply. And yeah, I just feel like being alone in that moment.
yeah.
Gosh,
Well, it was because the way I explain it to him, and I'm very open about this journey. We shared about it, we blogged about it for years. It's not something that I can't talk about now, which is a blessing, because I know that it wasn't in vain. I know I can help others and empower other moms who have been through such heartache to get back on their feet and move forward. I'm not on necessarily, but forward. And the thing is it's not just loss that you're suffering, it's trauma. And so when you put those two together, extreme grief and then extreme trauma in that grief, it's kind of a recipe for disaster. And that's what we've experienced. When I think back to that day, that moment, I can feel almost the guttural screams coming from the depth of my body in that office. I remember staff looking at me like deer in headlights, like just not even knowing what to do, even leaving the office, all the nurses and all of the people, even the other patients, just staring at me like they didn't even know what to do. And I'm like, can somebody just break this silence somehow? But to think back, if I were to hear that scream as an outsider, because of the way it felt was so deep and painful, I didn't even know I was capable of some of those sounds. I can only imagine, like, there's what do you do? What do you do for someone, especially someone you don't know? And that brought me to a long journey of like, we have to be better as women about walking into the uncomfortable moments and walking into difficult things and not always feeling like we have to have the answers or the words. Might not even be your best friend or your sister. We just have to be better about it. But it takes a lot of vulnerability, even on the other side, to step out of your comfort zone and jump into someone else's discomfort and sit in that and not have the answers. So it was a long journey of grief, and it was a rough start to motherhood because when I went through a lot of my early miscarriages, I didn't really know how to define myself as a mom. I had been pregnant, but nobody really knew me as a mom, and a lot of people didn't know that I had been pregnant, or it was just this inner circle that knew at that time. And so it was kind of one of those, just you kind of lose your identity in that, and then your desire to be a mom, it becomes very difficult. Those milestones, those Mother's Days and holidays and all the things that come along with the pain of that. And then when I gave birth to my son, because a lot of people also, including myself, had no idea that when your child is stillborn and they're deceased, you still have to have a typical birth, right? So it's better for mom, and it's just better for her future deliveries if she's able to carry again. And so I had to be induced and have a typical delivery. And it was a 36-hour, very painful, grueling, emotionally, physically labor.
Labor is already in and of itself
Yeah.
trauma to your body, and then to know on the other side of it, you're not getting to hold the child with life. Like you've lost your child, so you've got to go endure that. I don't even know how mentally how you got through, how you get to the next moment. So I feel like that's a lot of what I want to help moms too is like how do you see the next where's the light? How did you find it?
Well, it's not there right away. And it's not there. I don't even know the moment that I found it, because the reality is, I think it just seeped in second by second, blessing by blessing, person by person, morning by morning. Because for a very long time, I didn't see the light. I just thought, how is this even possible? Now, at this point into our journey, it almost felt like a joke on me. And my husband and I grieve very differently, which is very common in any kind of grief situation. But he really was my rock. And he was the one who understood that, like, nothing else really mattered to me during that season of my life. I had to just survive it. And there's kind of a beautiful thing that happens when you're grieving that deeply. And I always call it the grief tunnel vision. And it's literally so freeing and refreshing, because the little things in life and the stressors that normally bother you, they go away. Like, your vision for what's important becomes really clear. And that's just the people in your home, the couple friends that really mean the most, and like just the simple joys of just being outside, and that fresh air and that wind blowing in your face actually feels good for that second. Like, that felt like a blessing. Could care less about finances. I could care less about work. I could care less about all the things that will truly diminish when we're not here any longer. They just go away. And it's kind of a beautiful place, even though it's sad beauty in a way, because it just everything becomes really crystal clear. And sometimes I miss that grief tunnel I talk about, because life does go forward, and you do get wrapped back up in the chaos of life, and you forget, like, this really isn't important, right? In the big scheme of things, like stressing out what's for dinner tonight is really not that big of a deal. Like, we can really just open that fridge and grab something and we'll be okay till the next day.
Yes.
But we just put so much pressure on ourselves. And there was I had nothing to give at that time. So there was no additional pressure to give myself. I just had nothing to give. So slowly but surely, and the people that stepped in, the friends, I lost friends, I made friends in that journey, the people that stepped in, that care, that dropped a meal at the on my porch, that sent gifts or flowers or remembered important dates, the things that like those little things went a long way. The people that didn't know what to say but just showed up and just loved on me, that's what where the light came. My faith was a big part of that, but I struggled with my faith for a while. I didn't struggle with my belief, but I wrestled with God. We had a lot of fights. Well, I should say I did a lot of kicking and screaming, and he did a lot
Right.
of parenting does, which is patience and love and endurance. And I'm here for you. But I fought it. And so,
Well, rightfully so. I mean, it's
yeah, and I know that like because of my belief system, I know in retrospect that that was okay. I know that he needed me to wrestle that out, and on the other side of it came my faith was much deeper, much stronger, more secure, and I was able to share that with other women through the process. So it's an odd thing to probably say, and maybe an even odder thing to hear. That sometimes I say I would have rather have gone through that than not. So because I would have never said that in that first year, 2, maybe even 3 years after grief, but we're on 10 now. And the reality is that experience and the loss of my son has given me such a great perspective in life. And it really changed me and it's made me a better person. It's made me a better mother for who I am today. And I'm not saying that everyone has to go through that to be a good mom, but it really shook things into perspective. I really try not to sweat the small stuff. I really don't because tomorrow's not promised, even for my living children. And so I'm grateful because again, my belief system, I know I'll see my son again. So if that, I'd rather have that happen than to have never had him at all. And the time that we did have with them, I really cherished. He wasn't breathing. He was stillborn, but my husband and I chose to spend, 13 hours reading to him and praying over him. And we wept a lot during those 13 hours, but I wouldn't have traded it for the world, because he was still my child. And so there is so much women can do for each other in that process to follow. And but the big thing is to show up. And just if you don't know what to say, you don't have to say anything. And most of us don't know what to say. Even still, I get a lot of messages and calls from people, friends of friends. I have a friend who just went through what you went through, or I don't know what to say to this person. And can you talk to them? And there are times I still feel completely speechless when I talk to somebody because everybody's story is so unique. And I lost a child, but I'm not in the same shoes as that other woman, that other couple. And so their dynamics are so, so, so unique. And so it is hard to have the right words because there aren't really any. Like, are there good words for that besides, "I am so sorry that this happened to you.
yeah.
I want to hear as much as you want to share about your journey. I want to hear about your story. I want to hear about your child. If you want to share that, I'm here to listen." And then, remembering things.
This is so important, like, to hear your
Yeah,
fact that you're
I
willing to openly share is probably a lot of moms that need to hear this right now and see
yeah,
you on even on this part of your journey 10 years later, like, we're speaking to all sorts of moms here, like new season, loss, all of teenagers, all of the journeys, but hearing your heart and what you have to say, let it out. Yeah, let's hear it.
yeah. And I think that 10 years later, well, I can tell you for the first year, I like couldn't even comprehend 10 years down the road. Like healing, like what? There's no way to come back from this. I would wake up and the minute my eyes open, sorry, I get a little weepy when I think about this because that emotion is so strong for me, but I would wake up and literally just begin sobbing the minute my eyes opened, and that was after nightmares all night long and just it's traumatic, right? And so I would wake up and just immediately begin bawling. Oh, I don't want to be awake, but I'm so terrified to go to sleep. And I remember like how hard it was to physically pull my legs out and just get off the bed. And then there were times where I did it and I felt like they just caved in and I just hit my knees and just wailed on the floor. One time my husband came home from work and it was probably 3 or 4 in the afternoon, I don't know, but it was a normal work day. And he said, "Oh my goodness, and how long have you been here?" And I'm like, "Since I woke up." Like, I couldn't do anything. I was just that sad. I was just reeling. I don't even know if sad's the word. I think grief encompasses so many emotions that it's not even it's not even possible to really explain the amount of things that go on between fear, anxiety, just depression, and, just a yearning for just, I don't want to die, but I don't want to be here and I don't want to be in this season.
Yep.
But what do I do with this? How do I sit in this? And it's just a slow progression of every day, just waking up and knowing that, like, the pain just gets a little bit better, a little bit better. Maybe not day by day, but week by week and month by month. Time really does help. I wouldn't say it fully heals. You have to do a lot of work. I did a lot of therapy. I did a lot, and I don't think without that stuff I would have gotten to where I am today. But I remember thinking, how how I can't even imagine healing from this. And 10 years later, I'm having this conversation with you, and I'm very blessed to say that I have two living children and we live a very normal, happy life. And I don't wake up crying anymore or reeling, and I don't have nightmares anymore. In fact, the majority of now when I talk about my son and our loss, most of it's joyful, or it's really an explanation to my children now because they know exactly what happened. They know that they have a brother that's in heaven that came before them, and they talk about him often. It's just a part of our story, and I'm grateful for it. I'm sad it happened, and I'm so sad if anyone else is watching this and is in the midst of it. But I guess my purpose in saying this is that the sun will come back out. You know,
Yep.
it will, and you have to allow it to, though. I mean, you have to want it to come, and maybe not today, but at some point.
I
It's
think you shared something interesting was that you lost friends through this process, which to me is mind-boggling because I think you're right. So many people try to say something that they think is helpful because they just don't know any better and they want to help you. Like everybody wants to pull you out, right? That's our main goal. It's like, let's get her out of this. How do we get her out? And you shared there was no getting you didn't want to be out of it. There was no getting out of it. So someone just needed to sit there and meet you where you were. That's the best thing you can do for someone. But for me, with the level of empathy I have, and I can't imagine losing a friend. So what did that look like of people who came in and came out for
yeah.
you process, and how do we do better?
Yeah, shocker. I'll tell you, it was a shocker for me too, because it was not who I would have expected a couple of friends to lose or distance themselves. There were various scenarios. I would say I'll point out two to three situations, but it's not because they said the wrong thing. I didn't cut ties with friends. It was friends deciding to pull away, or they were actually in a specific scenario offended by me because we had a group that got together. We did a book club. It was wonderful. I mean, I loved those girls very much, still do. And I struggled with being around some of them because, well, one had a newer baby, another, was struggling with infertility, and it was just really heavy on my head. Actually, a couple of them were struggling with that, and it was just a lot. I yearned to be near them, but so I would say, "Yes, I'll see you guys tonight," or, "Yes, I'd love to meet you for coffee." And then that day would come, and it was like I was frozen. I just couldn't face it. And I think that wore on them, and they felt personally offended. And I didn't have the words at the time because I didn't know how to explain that, like, I love you, but I don't want to be near you right now. And it's not that I don't have empathy for you or I'm not excited for you. I'm just literally kind of dead inside right now, And that they struggled with that. And so I think it was a two-part, right? Communication was not great, and it just fizzled. But other friends made their way in. I sadly lost a wonderful friendship that I had. We were pregnant simultaneously. In fact, we shared each other's pregnancy announcement, like in the car together, like, "I'm pregnant." "No way, I'm pregnant." "I'm 3 weeks." "What? You're 3 weeks?" It was like one of those. And so we were side by side pregnant, and it was wonderful. She didn't live in the same state. So it was not like we were always together, but she sent me a beautiful, she called me the day it happened. We talked on the phone and bawled. I mean, we just wept together. And I appreciate that phone call so much because I was shocked that she was able to kind of even do that. And then she sent a beautiful care package. I still have the blanket. It lays on my couch. It's one of the most comforting blankets I ever received. And then I didn't hear from her. And it went like stone cold silent. And that was so painful, so, so painful. And I later, aside all the details, but later when we were able to kind of sit down and talk about it, she really, what happened to me created such an extreme anxiety in her pregnancy that she couldn't face me. It was hers was clinically bad at that point, her anxiety, as well as then she had extreme postpartum depression and the almost survivor guilt kicked in and she laid in bed for weeks. And so the communication just tore us apart because it was became non-existent. I was offended by my friend who just, "How do you drop me?" And she was shaking in her skin. So it breaks my heart that she went through that. And we still love each other. And once in a while we connect. But that break there just fizzled our friendship. It's very unfortunate, but I care for her very much and I know she feels the same way. But it happens, I mean things really do happen. However, I always think of it like it made great space for some new wonderful people to come into my life and my world that really are still great friends today.
Yeah.
Walk that journey with me unexpectedly. Like this is how your friendship begins, and there's no secrets to be told at that point, and there's no
The book.
yeah, there's no, we're not wearing a pretty face on this one, right? Like my friends that they saw the worst in me first, and they still just loved me through it. And I'm very grateful for those friends. Those are the sip your tea when you're 80 on the front porch kind of friends.
Yeah, show up. Show up
Yeah,
when it
just the
counts
friends that
too.
just show up. And I'll say this too, my sister, we were very, very close. We're just 2 years apart. She kept showing up. And for some reason I really struggled with her. I don't know why. I struggled with probably because it was so close. We were so close that like I knew the second I heard her voice, I was just always going to be a puddle, right? So I created this distance. She called, she texted, she sent cards, she sent gifts, and she didn't stop. So my sister is another example. She was wonderful. We're 2 years apart, very, very close. And she didn't live in the same state. Remember, I'm in the military at this time, so I didn't live near any of my family. And so my sister showed up within 36 hours of hearing, right? She was there for my birth, she was there for the process. She When she left, she called or texted numerous times a day, cards in the mail, gifts, food, you name it. I mean, she was just the Mother Teresa of my grief tunnel. But
Yeah.
I pulled away, and I think it's because we were so close that I would break down the second I heard her voice or saw her name on my screen. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
When you see like someone you love after you haven't seen them in a while and you everything I already was doing that all the time and I couldn't do it more. And but she kept
Safe space to grieve too. So
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And so she kept showing up despite me putting the wall up. She was still there and she still loved me through it. And when I was ready, week by week, and, I kind of resurfaced, she was never mad about it. I mean, I know that it hurt her feelings and we were able to talk about it, but it wasn't something that she held against me. She knew I was just reeling. I wasn't the same human at that time. So I would say to any woman who just doesn't know what to do, just keep showing up. That's what you have to do. You just have to keep doing it, even if you're not getting a great response.
Yeah. I
Big
think
deal.
there can't be expectations in that kind of level of grief.
Yes.
You can't be expecting you to show up to the book club or show up to the thing because moment by moment that grief is it looks very different. So how do you there are some things that I see you doing and I saw you do in that moment, and I think some of it might come in from your history of being Lisa is this incredible former child life specialist who devoted her time to kids in life or death situations and helping them in those cases. So I think that brought some knowledge in for you to go through this process and honor your son in these really beautiful, amazing ways that another mom might not have. I don't know that in your experience if the doctors told you all the right things to do in that moment or helped guide you through or hey, you're going to want this down the road. So what did you do? Talk about some of those ways that you still talk about him openly with your family, and I love that so much. Like, his memory is so beautifully honored by you and your family. It's really sweet.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think I did have a little bit of I did have some insight as to what I could do. That was my role. I worked in the children's hospital. My role was working with bereavement and part of my role. And so I knew the process would be sticky in the middle of it, but that the lifelong value that I would receive from creating those memories would be so valuable. And so we took time to, before we went to the hospital, to pick out books that my husband picked one and I picked one that I specifically wanted to read to him and that he specifically wanted to read to him. So that book would always carry that memory with him. And we still read the book sometimes to our children. It's never without tears. We can't get through those books because they're very special to that moment. But that was really important to us, picking out, making sure we picked out an outfit and making sure we took pictures. We that was really hard to do, and in moments it felt kind of morbid. But at the same time, I can't imagine not having pictures of him and the reality of his being, and taking molds of his feet and handprints and footprints. I was able to get a beautiful necklace with his handprint engraved in it. And I don't think I took that off for like 4 years. I think it stayed on me for a very long time. And so, there are great resources out there. We had a doula and she was phenomenal. She was not a bereavement doula. There are specific
Sure.
certification. She did not have that. And so she was quite terrified walking into our situation. But she, we told her we still wanted her services and she showed up. And that built one of my greatest friendships too. She's one of my best friends. And she was phenomenal. She treated my birth like it needed to be treated because the biggest thing for me during the birthing process was I didn't know if I was going to get to do that again. This was multiple losses in. Now we're almost at a full term baby. Can I really not do this? Is my body incapable? And so I wanted that birth to be special and I wanted it to honor it the best that I could, eat despite the pain, physically and emotionally. And so I didn't want an epidural, even though I was being induced. I wanted to do all the things. I wanted to get on the birthing ball. I wanted to do this naturally. There was something that for me later clicked that it was a sense of control in that process too, because I was so out of control in every single way. I couldn't control the outcome. I couldn't control any of the details, but I can control how I handled this situation. And so she was phenomenal in the process. She was a great advocate. She listened to me. She listened to my husband. She helped him very much because he needed once our son was physically in our arms, or once that push happened and there he was, that was when my husband's grief began. And I was talking about when I first heard the news and the wailing that came from me. What happened to my husband in that moment was like a replica, but it was a man. And so to hear him scream like that and to see the tears, she was just such an incredible resource. And I can't imagine that journey without her. So for women who, any kind of birth, complicated or not, a doula is just so valuable.
Yeah.
And she became a lifelong your tea on the front porch kind of friend for a life, for her whole lifetime, guaranteed. So, I had a little bit of a, I don't know the word I'm trying to look for, a little bit of an advantage, I guess, to the things that I knew I would want to do. I wanted to have a pastor in to provide a blessing over our son. I knew all the things. I knew he was in heaven. I wasn't, but it just those little milestones mattered. And there's a great resource called Molly Bears. And Molly Bears, there was a woman who experienced a stillborn daughter. And I don't remember who created the Molly Bear. Maybe it was someone in the family, but they created a bear, a teddy bear, that was the same weight and physical measurements as her baby. And so when she could pick up this bear, she could feel the weight of her child in her arms again. And so we got a Jake bear, and I still love the bear, and my kids love it. They love it, and it's still kind of humbling when you pick this bear up and realize the weight of the baby, and you're like, this was because sometimes it doesn't feel real all these years later, right? But those moments, it was anything but, you know.
Yeah, and I love what you do on his birthdays as well.
Yeah. So his birthday for me is not as painful as the day that I found out he was gone. So remember we had that gap. So that the day we found he was gone was just life shattering. And so that day is always my heavy emotional day. But his
Yeah.
birthday comes and something changes. And it's maybe because there was life to him, and there's life to him eternally. And so I want to celebrate that. And so we always do something that we think a little boy at his age would enjoy. And so it might be the zoo, or, taking him to one of those Nerf war things, taking our kids to one of those Nerf war centers, or whatever it may be. We
Yeah,
try to imagine that he would love that. And we still do cake for his birthday. And
that's so sweet, and the fact that you have 2 beautiful children, and they are talking about him and their brother, and they know him, and they're young, and I love that you didn't protect them, and to each moment, each situation,
sure.
there's no judgment here. I think it's really sweet how you talk openly, and this isn't a hidden thing or a hidden hardship. How do you think that's kinda changed perspective or is shaping your kids?
Yeah, I think when you had originally asked me about my parenting style, and I said, I don't really have one, but we try to be very honest. And I
Yeah,
always try to think of when I'm raising my children that I'm raising them not for me, but to be young adults and then mothers and fathers themselves. And so it's really important to me that they're not getting overly sheltered by things that and trust me, I want to bubble them forever and keep them.
sure, we all do.
But if it can teach them now and increase their level of empathy and compassion for others, what a gift, right? So it's so natural to us. How is it shaping them? I think they are very compassionate. My 8-year-old daughter, she corrects me a lot when we're out in public. People, what's the magic question? Oh, do you have more children, or how many kids do you have? Right? And I always say, oh, I have two. I used to not. I used to, but it's a story, right? And it takes,
Sure,
and
sure,
honestly, it's not even to protect me anymore. It's to protect other people, because when I tell the story, it's heavy, and then there's more to it, and so I don't always have the time to go there,
sure.
and I don't feel the need to anymore.
Yeah.
Well, my 8-year-old certainly does. She says, "Hey, there are," she actually says there are 5, because my husband has 2 older children from, previous relationship before me. So she's right. I have 2 stepchildren. But in that moment, I talk about my 2 kids in my home, my 2 living children. But she says there are 5, and she names her big siblings. And she says, and then there's Jake, who's in heaven. And then, and so I usually get a lot of weird eyes, but I love that about her, and I
I
never
love that too.
her. I never correct her. She's absolutely right. She has a brother in heaven, and there's no reason to not talk about it. I think it's shaped her a lot more than I even realized so far.
Yeah. Oh, it has. It has, and I think it'll impact, like you said, we're all trying to raise the next generation of humans to hopefully run this world better than it's being run currently. But ultimately, that's what we're sending them off to do is to be independent thinkers, to be, to go do great things in the world. And the level of love and compassion I already see in your kids. I mean, I pray they keep that all the way through because it's incredible. They're just really sweet, loving, observant kids. Like, I feel like you take time to notice the things that matter versus the things that don't when you have that perception. So, what a blessing that Jake left and without even being here on the earth with us, the impact that he leaves in our life to really pay attention to what matters, pay attention to our families and our kids. We're so replaceable in all these other areas and aspects of life. You're easily replaced in your job. Things come and go, seasons change, even with friends, but you're never replaceable in that moment as a
Yeah.
mom with your kids. So I love how intentional you are with that and open with your kids. I think that's really sweet too. So if there is again that mom in that moment, that's what do I do or how do I preserve that memory or have those things to hold on to later? So important. And what a blessing that you had that background and knowledge so you could carry that with you for
I
Jake.
will say, briefly, it's not and it never will be enough, So sometimes there were moments, in that where there were more things I wanted to do even. And I kind of, in the moment, I let my emotions decide, right? Like, where is my limit here? And what do I want to do? But it's never going to feel like enough. And I would say do it anyway, because the more memories you have and the more moments you took, you're not going to regret those. If anything, you'll regret the ones you didn't.
Sure,
So,
sure.
as awkward as it is, and although it's not the same, it's something, and it's important.
Well, and I wish every mom had that advocate because I'm sure in those moments of loss and those moments of grief, they don't have the Lisa sitting there saying, try these things. This is going to help you years down the road, or this will be the memory you're going to want to cherish and carry with you. So I'm hoping that this voice reaches all the right listening ears to hear and help them through those situations. If you're open to it and okay to share your next pregnancy and your journey into
Oh, yeah.
to that you have now, how did that look for you? How did you get through those moments?
Yeah. Well, my subsequent pregnancies were clinically very high risk. I was very blessed that those came to me without treatment. They were unexpected pregnancies. Praise God for that. I we pivoted after two more miscarriages after him. We pivoted to adoption, and we were very excited about that. I actually always felt in my heart that I wanted to adopt. So it wasn't like a second best. It was just like, okay, well, I want to be a mom more than I want to give birth. So, than carry. And so we started that journey, and we were in the same week that we were getting ready to complete our second home study. I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And but the initial reaction from me was not excitement. First of all, it was a little shock because we weren't trying and I wasn't having treatments. And so just what this doesn't happen very often to me, And so, but my first response was, I don't have time for a miscarriage. I'm going through the adoption process. Like I don't have time for that. And so it's very sad because it takes away the joy of the pregnancy very, very much. I did not enjoy my pregnancies after my son. They were just terrifying. There was so many triggers. There were so much PTSD that went on. The amount of appointments and probing and ultrasounds and those appointments in general were so highly stressed, the stress induced from them just from our loss that I hated being at those appointments. At the same time, they gave me great comfort every time I saw she was okay. She was okay today. This time she was okay. But I never had the with my son before he passed, when I had my 20-week ultrasound, I felt like great, like we're good. I never
Mhm.
had that again because I knew that like you can be good and the next day you're not. And so it was so anxiety provoking to me, and I'm grateful for them. Don't get me wrong, and I would do it all over again. But they weren't enjoyable, and I think we don't talk about that enough. I didn't want baby showers. I didn't want gifts beforehand. I didn't want to name my children. I didn't want to do all of the things that you should be doing and being excited about any pregnancy. I didn't want to do any of that because I there was a piece of like fear and like self-preservation that I was holding on to. I didn't want to decorate nurseries. I wanted nothing to do with that because I that was also a very painful process after losing my son, was having all that ready to go and then the grief. It felt like I was living in a Lifetime movie, Lifetime movie that went wrong, but I feel like they all go wrong.
They do.
It's true, right? But I
Oh,
mean,
turn that
the
channel off in your life. Just turn it off. It's gonna
yeah,
end badly.
10 years. I mean, do we have cable anymore? Is that a thing? But so they were really, really hard, very
You're
hard.
not just talking like what we go 3, maybe 4 times for a checkup. You're talking when you're high risk and you've experienced loss.
Yes. And it's not just, so I had, we kind of found a couple different things that not necessarily were necessarily the reason that I lost my son, but they could have contributed. So I had some blood clotting disorders. We had this, we had that. And they were just not wanting to take any risks because of how much loss we had had. And so with my daughter, I had a total of 56 appointments between maternal fetal medicine, a hematologist, non-stress tests, ultrasounds, you name it. I mean,
How do
it,
you get anxiety peak that many times and like
I
50 times in
I
your
don't think I ever came out of it, to be honest with you. I don't think I was just lived in fight or flight to where,
yeah.
8 years later, and I'm still working on resetting my parasympathetic system, truly. And I believe it's all from that season of my life. The sleep issues, because the reality is that I feel like I know when I lost my son, and I feel like it happened overnight, literally in my sleep, or at least late in the evening, because I felt him and then I didn't. Like I knew when the movement was happening and I knew when it wasn't. And so that triggered sleep felt unsafe for me emotionally deep inside my brain. And so when I was subsequently pregnant, I hated falling asleep because I was afraid I'd wake up and something would have been wrong. Not to mention, I didn't want my babies to sleep because then they wouldn't move. So if I didn't feel movement within 30 minutes, I was poking my children, poking my tummy. And my daughter was very ornery. She got that, but I needed that. I needed that. I had a little Doppler at home. I don't necessarily say that that's a great thing to do, but it was the only thing that got me through was
Yeah.
I could hear her heartbeat at times, and I used it a lot. I really think I created a sleep disorder mess in that child because she never sleeps. I mean, now once I get her to sleep, she sleeps, but she's 8 and she still needs it. She needs my help. But as a baby, she was not like she never slept more than 2 hours at a time. It was just because I never let her in utero. I started the sleep patterns, but I had to. It was my survival, you know?
And she's gonna sleep fine as a college kid and adult. You're gonna it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be
She's very,
she's gonna be the one that, keeps everybody getting coffee while they're
yeah,
studying. She'll be
very
fine.
happy. She's a great morning kid. She's a
She'll
great,
be yes, there you go.
yeah,
See? That
yeah.
was still by design. Don't be
But
hard on yourself in that
yeah,
way.
but I think that there's a lot to that. I really didn't. I'm not hard on myself about it. It's what we needed. It's
Sure.
what we needed. And I wasn't hard on myself in the moments too of like, okay, I need to put Doppler on and I need to listen to this. Even if I just did this 2 hours ago, I need to do it again. Because if she wasn't very active that day for whatever reason, if you've been pregnant, you know that there's very active days and there's ones that are not. But to me, if there's not, then there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Very, very highly terrifying experience. And yeah, so if somebody could just hand me all the babies, I'm happy to take them all in.
Well, I think some of that no judgment, I think you were always like that before, but you're kind of the mom that I go to for that. Like there's no judgment in hard seasons with you, and I'm sure that shaped it even greater for you having gone through real serious issues. Like you know what is serious and what is really not. So I feel like you're always so good at being that voice of pulling me out of the times when I'm like this is so hard and this is worst case scenario. And you're like, no, it is not. So I think your perception of like just having this real perspective of what matters most and what's important. And it's not the Instagram perfection. It's not the social media perfection. It's not eating on China every night. It's like, you're like paper plates and takeout, girl. I got you. Let's do this. So I think all of this, like I see the beauty in this experience. That's why it's hard for me to know you've lost friends in the process because what I see in this beautiful side of you and this beautiful friend that you are and the encouraging mom that you are, great loss for them because you just have this sense about you of what matters. And it's really sweet to see your perception. And I love that, like I said, Jake is a part of that. He really is.
Thank you.
We talked a little bit earlier about your journey as a military spouse and kind of challenges that entailed in that part of it. And one of the big things that I was a little bit surprised by was the struggles that come with being, you were in Hawaii, you've moved back now to the East Coast, a retired military family, which in your mind you think, yay, retirement. They must have such a beautiful life and a great picture and all this wonderful support because that's what we think we do for our military. Not the case. I'm lucky, which it's very different. So what is your journey now with your family and in that season of retirement challenges that you're dealing with?
Yeah, it's a great, again, topic that needs more attention. Well, if you are in the military or a military family, you know that 20-year countdown is like, it's so exciting. We did 22, and you can't wait for that day. For us, it was a little different. It was more of a fast, unexpected retirement that we made a decision kind of quickly, and so we didn't really have time to prepare. We actually thought he was going to do like another 5 years, or we were going to hit 30 or something. But he was, for the majority of his career, probably like 75% of his career, he was in special operations, and so he spent a lot of time deployed to a lot of very hazardous places. And so he was interesting was when he retired, the emotional side of things hit when things slowed down for him. So it's like your body and your brain, they're just so woven together so well that there's just this protective layer of like, I don't go there until I stop. And that's what happened to him. And so pieces of traumatic events and stressful situations in his fight or flight, he's getting lots of work on that right now. But he never came out of that, but he didn't have to be in it anymore. And so the struggle of just him losing kind of his identity and who he was and all the things he did to now what do I do?
Sure.
And it's hard. It's really, really hard. We are, let's see, about 3 years now post retirement, about there. And things are finally starting to feel whew, like we can breathe. But that came with a big move and like, let's take some time off here. Right. So he hasn't been working for 7 months to just relax because right when he retired, most people think that when you retire from the military, you're set for life. Well, that's not the case. I mean, you make less than you made when you were in, so you still have to work. And so he went right, most people, and so he went right into contracting work for the government, doing other jobs. Those were still high risk, high. And so he basically just shifted buildings, and had a different title. But it really has taken him having to stop to begin to heal.
Sure.
And it's been an interesting journey. I mean, but it's taken a lot of compassion as a spouse,
Yeah.
a lot of patience, a lot of like, okay, I thought we were going to be done with this, but
Yeah.
I guess it's part of us forever. But there's this wonderful thing that happens when you are a military family, and it's the community that wraps their arms around you knowingly or unknowingly. It doesn't matter how long you've known them. There's just this, we get up and we help each other and we show up and we do the things because you don't have that with family. And so, like nearby family. And so, even in this, we've met great people that were not part of our military journey, but now they're retired, we're retired, and we're still constantly showing up for each other and helping each other. And someone gets sick, we drop off the meal. We do all the things we don't even think. It's just like go mode. We just step up because that's how we're kind of wired now. So it's been a journey, but it does get better. So I'll tell the spouses who are watching that it gets better. You just have to know that it doesn't end at the retirement ceremony.
Right. Well, and to know too, I think you did such a good job at noticing your husband. Like he lost that purpose and that identity and who he was, and you just swooped in as a best friend and came alongside him to just help him find it again and find joy. Like, how do you find real purpose after your purpose was literally saving lives? Got to be
Well,
really come back
yeah,
into normal life.
and that was the hard part too, was like he didn't really, and I think a lot of servicemen and women struggle with what is what else do they enjoy? I mean, is their life outside of being dictated where it's going or where you can live or even what you can wear to certain places and so it became a well what and our journey into the retirement process and where we live now was nothing shy of a gift from God and how it's unraveled. But for my husband it was kind of digging back into some childhood stuff and being around horses and being so he now is volunteering almost full time at a equine rescue working with horses. He's actually training my daughter to ride. He is, and this is stuff he hadn't done since he was little, and he is spending a lot of time with some rescue horses and sanctuary horses and even building their stalls and doing all the things, and it's really been a very healing journey for him. But it didn't come through, hey honey, you should go do this. It came through our daughter wanting to ride and him going and kind of his eyebrow kind of perked up a little bit and maybe wanted to come back to volunteer as a family. And so we spend a lot of time there volunteering as a family, but it's been a very healing journey for him. So he's finding a lot of joy there. He's just now getting back to the point where he's like, okay, I think I'm ready to like enter the work field again.
Yeah.
So, but he also doesn't want to take away from his time at the farm. So we're navigating.
Yeah, well, if that and that's healing is just what he needs. I just love that you meet him where he needs to be met in that moment. And, I'm sure the other hard things you've been through and what matters and what doesn't when you have a husband being deployed and you've experienced loss, just the way you show up and navigate through that. I know there's in any military families, the divorce rate's even higher than the normal divorce rate, which is heart-wrenching and scary, but the fact that you're navigating the waters and you're showing up and you're sticking in of like, I'm not giving up. I'm here and we're gonna figure this out and I'm gonna be alongside you for the whole journey. It's really beautiful to see. And I know that doesn't come easy as as a wife and a mom. So kudos to you for
Our motto on that, every time something gets really thick and hard, we always come back to we survived something way harder than this. Like we can do this, right? So if we
big.
got through that, which the divorce rate for stillbirth or loss of a child is shockingly high. It's like 75%. I don't know what the actual statistic is right now, but when we were at the hospital delivering our son, they give you this packet and stuff when you leave. And there's a packet in there about divorce rates and marriage. And we're like, really? Like, how encouraging, right? And so, but
For
it was,
that packet.
but I'm kind of grateful for that packet because it was like, oh, I have a challenge now. Like, you are not going to take more from my life, you know? And so, that even when we were not on the same page, we knew that we were not going to be part of that statistic. And so it's the same with military. And I'm not saying that some people haven't had to go through that. I
Yeah.
have empathy. It is the hardest thing to transition to navigate together. And
Yep.
so my sincere empathy in those situations. But I was blessed to say that we like made that decision at the hospital that we were not going to be that statistic and we weren't going to give up our journey to having more children. And that made us really close. And it also got us through a lot. And like I said, when I was on the floor all day and he showed up from work and I don't even think I went to the bathroom. Like I just never got up that day. But he, picked me up that day. He put me in the shower. He clothed me. He fed me. And I was 30. It's not like you expect that at a geriatric situation, right? He'll take care of me then, but he took care of me when I was 30, and he served our country. Like we get these kudos as spouses all the time. And of course they are important and they matter and the spouses are standing by. They're really the ones that are in the literal trenches. They're the ones missing everything from their families. They're missing holidays. They're not having warm food, at times. Like
And
you
the
think about
traumatic experiences they're in every day that their minds are just processing is
it's
wild.
horrible. I mean, it's really sad, especially these guys who are in special operations. I mean, they are really going through some really hard things and it really messes with your brain and your heart. And so I look at him not just as my husband a lot. I look at him like with deep empathy and gratitude for all that he has done to keep our family safe, to keep our nation free. I don't take it lightly. And so when I see all the vets on the streets and the thing, I know why. And I used to think, oh my goodness, it's just like, the reality is like when you're when you retire, all of a sudden your world and identity changes and there's no one there to help and people get divorced and it's scary. And I just didn't, I would never, I don't even know how to put words into it. I look at him and I think he's just amazing for all the things he's done. He's not perfect. I'm not perfect. We've had our struggles. We are not Mrs.
But
Jones,
yeah,
but I look at him with great gratitude, and I want to honor that for him. So if this is what he needs in the season, then I think it's amazing. And that means that we're taking less vacations and we're doing less because there's less money on the table, but you can't gain back healing. You can't get that through money. So it's very important to me that we honor this season that he's in and God's been good to provide during it all.
yeah. I think there is like I got to see small glimpses of the military community just from my husband being gone 6 to 7 months out of the year, me being in an area that was mainly military. The moms would just I mean, one girl I bought a baby carrier from, and she brought breakfast too, because she's like, "I figured you're a new mom and you might need this too." The way that you love on and create community, I think that needs to be spread into moms in every community. Like, every circle of moms in every neighborhood should have women that are doing exactly what you all do as military spouses for each other. It is truly a beautiful community. I don't think people realize the struggles and all the other things that you're going through on the other side. And, we celebrate 4th of July and yay for our freedom, but we don't realize how it impacts every family that's a true part of that. So, and how we're kind of missing the mark on serving them on both sides, whether it's retired or they just come home. I don't think we have enough support there across the board to really help them in the way that they deserve after what they've done as real heroes. So, yeah, and it's great to see too that you're the other side of the statistic. I think for every mom, that doom and gloom, if your spouse is deployed, you see that, and that statistic sometimes hits in a different way of like we're doomed, like we're not going to make it. But I know for me, in different seasons of being a mom and things being hard, when I see another mom that's done it and she's made it and she's okay, it just kind of gives me that hope of like, you know what? Millions of moms have gone before me and they've done this hard thing and they're still okay.
Yeah.
So I love
And
that pictures like we're here. There's
right.
another side to this statistic and you can
Yeah.
get to it. It's
Yeah, and
hard.
you have to work for it. I mean, you have to work, I mean, you just do anything that's worth anything in life is usually takes a lot of work, and so you have to be willing to put that in. So, I appreciate it, but those statistics and those scary things that come your way, I would tell anyone watching this who's in the midst of that, like it's it's just a number, it's just a number. Just
Yeah.
punch it and just if it scares you, look away.
Yeah.
Look away. And
Who are
it
they
doesn't matter.
pulling anyway? I've never been pulled on these marriage things.
Exactly. It's very
I
true.
I'm looking at like tests of IQ across the countries too, and I'm like,
Yeah.
well, my kids have never where who are they finding for these? What is how accurate is this? So sources of information. It's nice we have it at our fingertips, but consider the source.
Yeah. Well, and we throughout our infertility and loss journey, we were always the really weird statistic. It was always like, "Oh, this only happens to 3%." And my husband's like, "Count it in. It's ours." Like,
That's
that
for us.
what it didn't matter what it was. It was like, "Well, you've got this test popped positive during this pregnancy, but this is really rare." And we're like, "We know." Like that's so we joke a lot and say like we're challenged to always beat the statistics because we've created so many of them. So we're like
You're
we're
the
yeah, we kinda have to put them out a little bit,
yeah,
but there's great joy in the retirement. I mean,
yeah.
it's so great to see like, I feel like I've gotten to know my husband on a whole different level, and he's able to share more and open up more about his hardships, and there's just almost this brotherhood that he had before, like we were talking about the spouse side, and it's not really there anymore, and for me, the spouse side they're still there, but like we stop needing each other so much. But that leaves two people who have that community so strong to then turn to each other. And so then it's almost like you remarry each other and you're like, okay, now we have to do this for each other.
Yep.
And I mean, he's around a lot, but it's great. I'm
Oh, I'm with you in that season too. We did the 20 years of traveling half the year and now there's no travel. And I'm like, oh, you're still here. It's relearning. But yeah, it's flipping the switch, but you're really having to relearn. It keeps you on your toes is the best thing I can say. And yeah, it's hard. It brings on new challenges of figuring it out. But kudos to you for sticking in and showing up and doing the hard things, actually doing them. Do you have just a moment that you can remember with, your kids when they were smaller, that hard moment or thing that just kind of defined or changed motherhood for you or anything that sticks out as like your crazy wow moment as a mom?
Yes, yes, I do. I have a moment that I share with a lot of laughter. Often it was my moment of I can't do it all. I can't do this all by myself, and it's okay to ask for help. And it was when my baby, so my daughter was two and a half, and my son was probably 5, 6 weeks old at the time my husband deployed when he was just 3 weeks old. We had come off a really hard delivery with him. He got sick right after. My daughter had the flu. It was just like when he left, I'm like, I remember standing in the doorway. I couldn't even drive him to the base because I couldn't even still. And I remember standing on the front porch and watching him go and like, how am I going to do this? And just tears falling. Like, I just wish he were here. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to manage this. And all of our support came in at the rear end of my pregnancy that was so high risk and he had a lot of trips. And so like all of our people were kind of like, okay, baby's here. We gotta go now.
We're tapped out.
And I'm like, this is not happening. Although I had a lot of local support, but I wasn't calling on them yet. And so that I'll get to that. And so I thought I could do it all. And my son was in, that, what do they call it? Cluster feeding, where he was nursing like every 20, 30 minutes all night long. My 2.5-year-old was a terrible sleeper. We talked about that. And
Cluster feeding, like, let's just stop for the mom that's like watching this while she's doing that right now. It's the work of the devil. We're sorry. Like, it sucks. And it's a hard scene. Like, there's no beating around the bush. We don't talk about that enough. Like, it
I couldn't even remember the name
sucks.
of it because I didn't want to. I wanted to
No, your brain's like, mm-mm, no, that's a bad time. So if you're in it, it's
like
gonna get better. It's,
like granola bars on one table and like bottles of water on the other. You're like phone right here, a charger, and you're like just
praying
that's
you don't get mastitis in the midst of it. Like you're just like it's all the things. Like sure, every shirt has breast milk. It's you're
no,
not pretty.
you're
You're
just a
just
machine at that point.
you're just not. Yeah,
So
exactly.
wouldn't trade it for the world. I would trade that. So
Don't forget the pain. Yeah.
yeah, but it was hard. But But he had been doing that for like he was like on like a 48-hour milk binge, and I was exhausted
And
beyond
alone, you're alone in
and
this.
alone, no tap out, no midday honey's home from work, like nothing, right? And it's not like I had even really recovered from the first 4 to 5 weeks of his life yet. And so I'm just exhausted. And so early in the morning, it was like 7 or 8 in the morning, and I smell something burning in my house. And I'm like, this is not happening. We're going to fire. And I'm like looking all around. I've got the baby in the carrier, and I'm like, I've got my toddler with me because I'm afraid, like, if there is a fire, I need her next to me so I can figure this out. Right. And so I know it's upstairs, and I'm like sniff testing everything. I can't find it. It must be in the attic, but I clearly smell a harsh burn type smell. And so here I am, like, I'm just gonna have to call the fire department. I'm gonna have to call 911. No, but I was terrified because I'm like, this is gonna be the situation where like there really becomes a fire. And
Yeah,
so I didn't want to risk that. And so I called 911.
yeah.
And I mean, within like 45 seconds, by the way, I'm in a bathrobe, it's freezing, it's like early March, and I'm like in my cluster feeding, horrible smelling nightgown and a robe.
A robe on that.
Guarantee like a 3-day top knot and
Yeah.
like I don't even know, swollen still, barely still walking correctly. And they show up at my house and it's like 10 firefighters come storming out of the fire truck, like in their gear to like that, like calendar style gear. They
Oh,
all look like they're like 24 and just stepped out of the
of
calendar.
course, of course,
And
it's the hot
I'm
firefighter day.
so right now. Like, trust me, I'm not on the market, but this is too much for me. I cannot do this. And so they're all stepping out. And they've got like axes and everything.
Oh my gosh. Like, I'm not on the market, but also, like, I'm not even a human woman right now. Like, that's not fair. That's not fair.
Extreme embarrassment. Neighbors leaving for work. Like this
Oh,
frozen, and I have to stand on the curb. I can't even be at the front porch. And I'm
with
like
the babies.
with
Oh,
the babies the little one's probably wanting to feed. I don't even remember, but well,
I
maybe
hope you fed while you were out there. Like, please tell me you just whipped out and nursed the baby on the corner.
I probably did. Chances are I did. Chances are. So they were gone be upstairs maybe 3 to 5 minutes. I don't even know. It felt like an eternity. But when they came down, they were holding my little. So, I use essential oils and lots of natural stuff. They carry a frankincense resin burner. So that naturally has a smoky smell to it. My 2.5-year-old took it out of wherever I had it at the time, plugged it in her room, and just put the little switch on it.
I love her self-sufficiency. Like, it's like, I
So they
just
come down with a frankincense burner, like, "This is your problem, ma'am." And I'm like, "This is not my life." And I
like, could
just
you just go back in one time and, like, find something? Could you turn the oven on for me and tell me it's leaking gas and then
there's a fire in my
just
wall.
go somewhere, go back.
I
I don't
know.
accept this
So
answer.
I was so embarrassed, but also I remember thinking, if I had just called someone this week and gotten a nap in, I may have had like half a brain cell to like think about that.
Or the resin burner. Yeah,
Or
no.
just make sure my daughter didn't sneak in somewhere and get it. Like, I was just so overwhelmed and tired. I was missing so many important details apparently. And I did. I called a friend that day and I'm like, I need to tap out. I need a nap. I pumped a bottle. I need to sleep for 6 hours, and I did. And that was the day I realized like you can't get to that point. You can't get to the firefighter moment. You have to call in the help before you have to call 911. Really. And so
Literally.
literally. And so I got better about that. And it's funny because I'm so adamant now, even though my kids are bigger now, I'm adamant now when someone has a baby or someone kid has surgery, or I'm adamant about jumping in and helping tie the knots together. Like, I'm dropping off dinner, I'm picking up your little one, I'm doing this, I'm doing it. Like, I don't even ask, I just demand. I'm like, here, I'm gonna do it. So we just have to be better about asking for it and not just giving it. And a lot of us are very good at giving it and not receiving. That was my moment.
I'm so with you on that. I mean, I could hardly receive when you brought takeout with a new baby and you're like, we're going to eat on the paper plates. And I'm like, no, I'm going to get the hosting things out for you. And you're like, if I come in your house, you have China out, I am going to take you down. And I was like, this is the friend I need in my life. Like, this is what we need to do for each other as moms is like, there is no, like, just show up, just do the thing, help out, be humble, ask for it. And like, who doesn't love to snuggle a baby or
I know.
play with your cute little toddler? Let people have that joy. Like, they want to know they gave you peace because, especially for moms who have been there, like, we know we're through that season. Let me tell you something. If I could right now, even a stranger mom in the neighborhood that I've never met before, like walked out in her bathrobe with firefighters and I'd be like, can I take your babies? Can I
Yeah,
hold babies for you?" Like so much joy that I would have in that moment of knowing I'm helping her through the hard. Just
absolutely, absolutely. It's a blessing on the other end. Like, I love sniffing a baby.
yes.
I will rock it and hold it and love it, and, like,
Although don't, because then I'm gonna should we adopt a new no, my husband no.
I know, I know. I know. It's funny too when you hit 40. I don't know, like, who's our experience in this, but there's this itch again. Like, I can still do this. Like, we can do another
Do
one.
that again. Yeah.
And not, you know, like if one just showed up, I'd embrace. I'm not fighting for that, but just because of way too risky for us. But man, there is that itch that happens
It
again.
does. It comes back because 'cause you're like or maybe it's yeah, I forgot. Or the teenagers, like, you're not, "I love you, mommy," anymore. It's like, "Mom."
Right.
Like, I'm like, "I
Right.
just be mommy again where they love me." So, yes, there's those moments, and my husband looks over and he's like, "Retirement, baby." He's
Right.
like, "No," and all over again. So,
Yeah. We're thinking of
different stage.
grandbabies in like 15 years, 20 years, but it's a
Right?
sweet season too. Like my 8-year-old is much more independent now. She is just an independent girl anyway. And so, I mean, she was always the kid, like the 2.5-year-old that would wake up in the morning and get dressed and wake me up and,
Yep.
mommy, have my breakfast. And you're like, what'd you eat? Like,
What did you have?
or my 5-year-old son is like, he wakes up and he's still like, I need to hold you. You need to hold me for like 20 more minutes. I need to rock him. It's just
Major
boys
time.
and girls. Yeah, they just are very different. But so
You
it's
rock that baby as long as you can.
I
Like
do, and I don't care if he's a wimp. I don't
yeah, you raise that wimpy
care.
child. I will rock you all day. Yeah, I think those moments are so tender, but I think you see too, like, you have such good perspective on that as well of like what's important and what matters and really what's an actual 911 and what's not a 911.
I mean, I live by, is this an emergency all the time? And not because of necessarily that moment, but I think we're just, as moms, we're just so quick to like feel like we have to handle all the details all the time so fast. And like, we've got a boo boo. Everybody drops everything and runs to the child and like, okay, like, is this a really an emergency or did he just get a scrape, and can we teach him how to cope with that without it being an emergency? Or just all the things that people are coming over for dinner, someone's stopping by, oh goodness gracious, now we have to like get in the professional cleaning service to show up in an hour. Like, really? No, our house can be a mess, nothing is an emergency, unless it's an actual emergency. And I use that a lot to like dictate my reactions to things and to teach my kids like, this is far from an emergency, so let's make sure we treat it appropriately, because we are just in this fix it fast instant gratification
Yeah.
lifestyle. And
And the pressure too of moms
Mhm.
do it all and do it perfect, I think builds that same anxiety of everything's triage, like even getting lunches packed. They
Mhm.
better be pretty and like, what if the other
All the
lady at
colors,
lunch sees
everything.
it? I've got to do, and she'll be judging my lunch. And what will the teacher say? Throw the granola bar and the yogurt in and just be done. Like, let's just we live in that emergency triage and it causes anxiety through our whole day.
Mhm.
So, like, how do you start your day? What does that look like to just not be always in that bleeding out mode?
Yeah. I mean, are you asking me really how to
I'm
start?
asking you, girl. Tell us the things. What do you do?
It depends on the day, but no, truly, like the one thing that I do consistently daily, obviously seasonally and weather dependent, is I have a cup of coffee on my front porch and it's a no kid zone. Like, I just need 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So normally I try to wake up before them. It just sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. And I get my coffee and I sit on my front porch. I have a very nice view from my front porch and it's quiet and it's full of nature and big trees. And it's the space where, like, I don't bring my phone out, I don't nothing like that. It's just me and my coffee, and sometimes I'm praying, and sometimes I'm just watching the squirrels or whatever it may be, but it's my moment to set my day.
Yeah.
Sometimes, well, at the beginning of when I started doing that, my kids would kind of roll out, and at first it's sweet and they wanna snuggle, and then they just start to bicker, or then they
Yeah.
wanna know what you're doing today, and then they wanna know what's for and you're like, so
Yeah.
it's a rule now, like, you do not come out unless it's a real emergency, which has not happened yet.
Yeah.
That shows you how right,
Somehow they're fine.
they're fine. They're fine inside, playing Legos or popping a show on for a few minutes while I just gain my moment. And it really does make a huge difference. If I don't do that and I like wake up late and have a million things to do, it's not
Yeah,
going
yeah. Yeah.
to go to
I
sleep.
think that's so important, like the morning setup. That is like my thing I preach and teach is like if you go in to chaos, you're gonna end in chaos and you're gonna wake up to chaos again. But if you go into it peaceful, having that just quick minute, not being on social media, I mean, you can find 5 minutes to sit outside if you take out some other things in your day. So I love that you're doing that. Ours is like evening glass of wine on the porch, and it's like don't come out here, even if you're bleeding, like, figure it out. You're gonna hear but, like, we gotta talk through that thing, you know? It's just having that moment of peace, and we're constantly overstimulated, our brains weren't meant for that, so we're in the 24 hours, 7 days a week of, like, the overstimulation as moms, so if you don't have a second where you step out of that, you're just gonna live
Yeah.
in chaos mode.
And if you don't know what to do, if you're one of those people that, and I've been there, so I get that. But if you're one of those people that is constantly, your brain is still always moving and you don't know how to sit there without a phone, or first of all, one, you need it more, but two, like need more of that quiet.
Yeah,
Two, find something to do with your hands while you're sitting there. Like take on a little embroidery thing. I don't know, bring out a book that's not like a to-do book. Bring out a pleasurable book. My husband has taken on, he's learning the ukulele, and so he'll sit out there and play, and I just listen to him. It's not
yeah.
as smooth,
You,
but
sir, are no John Mayer.
it's getting much better. But I just enjoy
Oh,
seeing him enjoy
that's
that, and
adorable. I love
listening. And but I think about how when we're 70, how will that look? Will he be sitting there playing that, and I'll be having my coffee, and and it's just a pleasurable,
Yeah, or
simple,
journaling. I think just even, like, starting your day by writing just get the dollar thing at Target and just write 3 things you're grateful for. Like, just start
right?
positive. It doesn't have to be, like, a fancy anything or even, like, learn the whole new hobby right now. I know sometimes I can't even wrap my brain around that. I'm like, I love to paint and I'm really good at it, but, like, I can't get that out in this season right now.
Right.
There's going to be a season for it. I'm gonna paint pretty things, I promise, but even right now, I mean, for us, that's it. It's just the quick journal in the moment of, business owner, mom, all the things. So yeah, I think just grabbing that minute where you set your intention is really lovely. It's a beautiful sets the day up so much better. Nothing's emergency after that. When you come in, you're like,
Right.
breakfast, I'm gonna work the to-do list, I'm gonna get the next step done, and like, we're okay. We're gonna
Mhm.
be okay.
Yeah, we have kind of a small family farm, and so we have quite a bit of animals to care for, and they do need routine and attention and caring for and feeding in the morning and all the things. And at first, when we started getting all these animals, I started like I wake up and immediately go outside. And now I'm like, it's just too much because like they automatically are all frantic too, and they're wanting their food and everything. They're knocking things out of your hands, and goats are climbing on you, and it's just. But I have to have that moment even before the animals, even though they bring me
Yeah.
such peace. I need to have it for myself before it turns into chaos mode because you don't really get that moment back. Like once you get moving, you don't really get it back. So take
You're
it.
drinking the cold coffee that
Yeah,
you read
even if you
about
work, yeah, I don't work outside the home. I do work from home, but like if you have to leave at a certain amount of time, you're getting your kids to school, whatever that looks like, just find a way to wake up 10 minutes earlier. It will be worth the loss of 10 minutes of sleep. Just
for
find
sure.
a moment.
If you have time, I would love to hear a little bit about how you navigate social media and just screens and all the things in life.
I'm a freelancer. I write, I do digital content, things like that. And so I have
Well,
to have
you're a
time.
really incredible writer. Like, let's be honest. We got to get
I
better about cheerleading each other and talking to ourselves that way. You are a kick butt writer, girl.
do. It's a passion and a gift, and I love writing. But that puts me in front of a screen, right? So I try very hard to minimize it. I could be better about my phone. I do mindless scrolling. Not happy about it. But I try not to do it too much. And my kids don't have devices. I'm not downing the people who do. But they did at one point. They had my son, he's only 5, but he just has one of those like little leapfrog,
Mm,
tablet things where he's doing games. And she has a Amazon Fire Stick. That was called not Fire Stick, whatever it's called.
a little, yeah.
We bought them specifically for a road trip because we were road tripping from the whole East Coast last summer. And I was losing my mind because they were just so antsy in the seat. We had lived on an island at that time and we came to the East Coast to travel. And so they had never been in the car more than 20. And so being on 10, 12, 5 hour stretches. It was very hard. So I caved. And what
Yeah.
I found through the cave was that once they got a taste of that, wow, that brought on behaviors I hadn't seen, that brought on frustrations, that brought on almost an addiction. And so we cut it off and we only use them for road trips. So in our home, we don't allow it, but we don't judge others. I'm sure other people had it figured out better than we did. I just couldn't figure out how to make this work. But with my husband and I, my husband's not much of a screen guy. He's more of a get your hands dirty kind of
Mine
dude.
too. He shares my Facebook. I'm like, could you at least get 20, get your own Facebook?
Oh,
Just
right, right. My mine got locked out of his a long time ago, and he had another one for like a small business he was doing, and can't even figure out how to change his name. So I'm like, you have to stop replying to him with your old business name. But he doesn't
getting
care. But
weird now. But yeah,
I
no, they
hide stuff on there all the time, and so it's this is the world we're in, right? I mean, I don't think you can completely just neglect or deny that we live in a digital world, but I think that the important thing is that you're balancing it with real relationships in real time, and that when you're on, you're doing something intentional with it. You're not on there like just sitting and scrolling. Although if you need the mindless 10 minutes, go for it. But
yeah,
get out of the comparison game. That's the thing. That's the one thing I can't stand about social media is the big comparison game. Everybody looks good and they're only posting the things they look good in, I mean,
right.
like themselves or
When no one posts the other side. I mean, I think we were even
right.
talking offline before we started this of like the chaos that ensues to get on this meeting. Like, what has to happen for two moms to sit for this long and talk? And what our house looks like on the other side of these cameras now that we've been offline for this long. It's wild. Like it's wild. There's nothing perfect about it. So yeah, I love that just being intentional. Like, why did I pick up my phone? Why am I on it? What time is it taking? Like stealing from something else is
Mhm.
that's what I always try to think, like, what is it taking away from at this point? And I do, I'm with you. Sometimes that mindless scrolling feels so dang good. So I'm like the happy heart person and the weirdo that like hearts. If you put like 16 pictures of your trip up, I heart every single, I don't just heart the post, I heart every single photo. And they're like, what is wrong with this girl? Like, does she not have but I'm like, you know what? I know what it took for that mom to post that daggone picture, and she probably felt good about herself. She's like, "We got our ish together. Everybody's smiling. I got one. Look at us. Here we are." Heck yeah, girl. Like, let's. I'm like, you look beautiful. What a great family. Love you guys. Like, I'm like there to just
You
sprinkle
are. You're
much
so
love
smart.
and kindness. Like, love you. Looks good. I love it. So that was my intention because I mean, I will be totally honest. It's the world I live in too. It is comparison. It
Mhm.
is everybody vying to get attention over somebody else. And it was real easy to look at, I'm not going to do that until I look like that or I have that or, all the things we don't want to do as women because we're criticizing ourselves. So to get out of that comparison trap, I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna spread love. Like I'm just gonna be the happy, crazy, love everybody on social media because I know they need it too. They didn't put that picture up to go see who didn't like it or who didn't make a nice comment. They came for the nice comment. So like I'm here for it.
I
I
love
got
that.
your back. I got you. I'm gonna write something nice. I'm proud of you. I'm cheering on your success. Like
I
even if
love
it's
that.
like the worst enemy that you know is still friends with you on there just to see what you're doing and they're not cheering you on, I'm cheering them on. Like I wish so much success and joy and love on them. So when I need that mindless scroll, I try to stay in that of like, let me just love everybody here. Like, let me just hit love, love, love on all these things. So,
I think I'm gonna
but you don't do screens for your kids though. I mean, it's tough. It's tough as teenagers too. I mean, they're fighting for it, and now we're in the all of my friends, and I'm the only one. Turns out they're not the only one.
no, and that's the thing. It's just we think that they're, like we again, the comparison game of like, well, maybe I'm the only one whose house isn't perfect. My kids are the only ones who don't have cell. No, it's not. There are moms behind walls all over the place trying to keep their kids away from screens. There are moms everywhere just trying to keep their house together or get last night's dishes done or whatever it may be. So, but I think social media has really, I mean, it's got a lot of great things it's brought to the world, but it's definitely made put a lot of pressure on moms. It really, really has, and I, I, I wish I could say because I don't know if I say this with full confidence, but I wish I had parented in a time where it wasn't a thing. Like, how would that look differently? I don't know, and I don't know in 5, 10 years when my kids, what will it look like then? Because I feel like it went so fast. It's like I didn't have a cell phone till I was 18 and it was a flip phone and,
Yes, and you had to push the button 3 times, so we're gonna show our age here real bad to, like, just get to the little key, you gotta push 1, like, this many times. Yeah, we weren't on it, like, in a blink, have everything. But I
right.
do love that, like, the experiences and things we can't give our kids, potentially, they're still gonna have access to that at their finger.
Absolutely. So there's some
Try
great,
to just focus on those.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, can't get you to that country right now, but I can definitely show you some really cool stuff about
Yeah.
it. It opens
Sure.
a door for, their potential gifts and talents one day. So there's good in it and no judgment. I mean, there's been meetings where I'm like, everybody take the screens because mama's gotta mama's gotta do the thing. So no judgment at all. It breaks my heart when I see like we're walking through Westminster Abbey and I felt like everybody was like this. I'm like, man, look up. Like you are in one of the coolest, most beautiful places in the world. I think we're missing a lot of life because of it. So
It
yeah,
breaks my heart when I see restaurants, when I see everyone at the table looking down. And don't get me wrong, there have been moments where I've handed my kids my phone at the restaurant.
sure.
I'm like,
Sure.
we had enough today, and mom and dad just need to be able to have a
Yeah.
conversation and make it through the whining. That's like I really try to make that like an 80-20. Like 80
Sure. Sure.
go out, that is not the case, because I think it's so important for them to know how to engage even when they're bored, like engage in conversations. We play something called the salt game. And so the child who holds the salt that's on the table at the restaurant gets to ask a question to everybody at the table. And then they pass the salt and that person answers. So nobody's talking unless you have the salt thing. And it's so funny and it's just cute. We learn fun things about each other. My husband and I were like, "What? I didn't know that was your favorite thing," or. So we have a lot of fun with the salt game. So they look forward to that going to restaurants because of that. And I don't remember where we learned it. I maybe we saw it on a show. I have no idea, but I was like, that's a great idea. And we tried it once and we love it. So try it and teach your kids when you're out. We do this, our kids order their own food. They have since I mean my daughter started at 3 or 4. My son started, his speech wasn't quite as strong, but he started around 3.5, 4, maybe 2. He's 5 now and he can clearly order. He'll tell him no seasoning, no this, no that. He's very intentional about ordering his food. And we have to teach them those skills because if their heads are stuck in screens, they're not getting them. And
Engagement, the conversation, the politeness. Yeah, they miss those options.
honoring the person that is doing their job, standing there in front of you taking your order, I think that's really important. And so, the screens have a place, a time and a place. And I think we just need to know our boundaries as parents.
Yeah, and I think we know too the development. I mean, I was just on the Today Show the other day where they were like, they're not meant to have this. It's not good for their development. It's like, right, but you put it all out in front of us as an option. So like shame on you guys. So, yeah, I think navigating it is so hard and everything's designed to target kids and like you think it's a good educational thing. It's really not designed for their development. Like we know that now. So, it's hard. It's definitely hard to navigate in this world. And when they've got friends too that are doing all the things and having all the social media they're not allowed to have, it's tricky. It's definitely tricky, but yeah, kudos to you, and I think just doing what fits your family, yeah, it's important, it really is. So, yeah, we're cheering on screen time mom too, we're not there's no judgment here.
Are on screens often and they're great kids too. Like it's just a
Absolutely.
lot of it for me is like is my personal annoyance. Like I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to fix this moment. I don't want to like you can't figure that out and then you're frustrated and then I have to fix it. And so it's a lot of it's like that too. So I certainly don't down it. I just can appreciate a family that can sit down in a restaurant and have a
Yes,
full conversation. Like that's very important for your family time.
yeah, for sure. Well, is there anything else before I know it's getting late and you're probably getting into the bewitching hours of bedtime? Looks like WWE in our house most of the time, and my kids are probably starving at this point. So, before we crash as moms and crash the whole family dynamic on both sides, is there anything else you share, leave moms with, and anything for that mom in that hard season?
No, I would just really, I think what you're doing at Empowered Moms is awesome. I think that women need this way more than you probably even realize. I mean, you know it because you knew that there was a need and you're trying so hard to fill that. And I applaud you for that big time because we don't all have the military community and we all don't have the awesome neighbor. Some people live in very rural places and they just don't have it. And so get connected. I mean, this is a great community building. And I think that, this is where screen time is great. you know,
Yes.
this
Yeah.
is this is where you're getting value in that time versus finding the guy who's doing pranks on TikTok, you know?
Yeah, grab some
Pretty
wine
funny.
while you're yes, it's funny, it really is, but grab wine, grab cocktails, whatever. Join us more, drop us any comments below. Lisa will chime in too to answer. We're happy to help support you, especially if you don't have that community, like, you are not alone. That's the biggest thing I want to know, so thank you, friend. I appreciate the encouragement on that front too.
Thanks for having me. You're such a good cheerleader, and I'm very blessed to have you as a friend as well.
Same, same. Thank you for sharing your heart so openly. I know these were hard things to talk about, and we really our prayer before this was really that we would bless a mom who is struggling, even if it's just one that needed to hear it today. We hope that it helped. Hope to help you through the hard times. So, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you so much. All right, bye.